New at 10, it's one of the busiest centers in the Bronx, but residents say getting there is a nightmare because there's just one way in and one way out. Tonight, Amy Yency tells us about the new plans for the Hutchinson Metro Center.
It's hard to miss the Hutchinson Metro Center, a sprawling campus of office buildings, in many ways a symbol of the development boom in the Bronx. For some residents, it's Exhibit A highlighting the lack of infrastructure in the borough.
As they say, once you build it, they will come. The problem is not only the road congestion that we have in the neighborhood, but also there is only one way in and one way out of this complex.
Arlene Grauer says a proposal to add a new exit to Hutchinson River Parkway, linking it to the center, would ease the gridlock. After 3 years of study, the City Transportation Department now says the project would cost nearly $128 million. People we spoke to say the city should make the investment.
There's a lot on this campus, and it would be feasible. As it grew, they should have actually thought the plan out to have something from the Hutch coming this way.
The center currently houses a large medical complex, a Marriott hotel, and the Bronx campus of Mercy College. Several bus routes and a shuttle service run through here, contributing to the traffic. And there are plans to add more buildings here in the future.
We can either try to address this problem now, or we can wait for years on end for a more chaotic situation to build up.
Community advocate John Doyle says if the city can't foot the entire bill, it should consider teaming up with a private developer. A DOT spokesperson says, quote, the city has no current or future plans to construct the ramps.
At a certain point, how many sardines can you shove in this can without there being a need for some sort of infrastructure or some sort of exit point?
There are 4 Metro North stations set to arrive in the Bronx in 2023. A new Hutch ramp would provide direct access to one of those stations. Supporters of the idea say that would also address a long-standing problem, the shortage of transportation options in the Northeast Bronx. Amy Yency, New York 1.
All right, new at 10, it was one of the worst traffic accidents that the city had seen in years. 3 generations of a family wiped out after a car plunged off a Bronx overpass into the Bronx Zoo. 7 people killed instantly. Well, 2 cousins related to the victims are now working on a project which they say makes their bond stronger and the community as well. Here's Amy Yency.
So these are the prices here.
This is Bubbly, a new app that lets Bronx and Westchester residents order their wash and fold service on their phones. Cousins Jacob Torres and Janelle Gonzalez launched Bubbly soon after opening their laundromat in Hunts Point. They tried to team up with a delivery service that would pick up the laundry and drop it off at the customer's home once cleaned. They couldn't find any willing to serve the Bronx.
The whole goal to the application is to give people back their time.
If you don't want to waste your time, come to the laundry, come to your house, do the laundry for you and drop it back off.
Gonzalez and Torres say they're more like brothers. They attended the same high school, grew up in the same Bronx neighborhood, and are now business partners. A bond they say was strengthened during a dark time. Back in April 2012, 7 members of their family died in a horrific crash on the Bronx River Parkway. The van they were traveling in smashed into the Bronx Zoo. 3 generations, including grandparents and children, were lost in an instant.
There wasn't a cloud in the sky, it was warm, it was just a beautiful day. And then I was driving to work, and actually driving to work, I drove by the Bronx River and I seen the accident. I had no idea it was my family.
Janelle Gonzalez was supposed to be behind the wheel, but his mother Maria kept him home, telling him to sleep in that morning. Maria and his younger sister Jaslyn were among those who died in the crash. He says his family and his mother are his inspiration.
She laid out the foundation of family and structure and the importance of family. So even though she's gone, we all stuck together.
To keep a close-knit environment, Janelle and Jacob say they only hire people who live in the neighborhood. Their app, which they helped design, has more than 300 subscribers since launching in November. They think about those they lost that day and how they'd feel about their new business.
And now that we're doing this together also while we're older, I think they'll be very proud of us.
The cousins say they're hoping the Bubbly app picks up steam so they can expand and open other laundromats throughout the Bronx and hopefully one day pretty soon throughout the entire New York City area. In the Hunts Point section of the Bronx, Amy Yency, New York 1.
Still ahead on Live at 10. New at 10, there's a spot in Van Cortlandt Park that could hold a sacred piece of history that dates back to when Africans were enslaved in the Bronx. Now some are concerned that it might be erased from history. Amy Yancey has more in tonight's Our Changing City report.
Tucked behind the Van Cortlandt Park tennis courts and down a rocky hill lined by tall trees, Putnam Trail is a favorite for bikers, joggers, and anyone seeking a lakeside view.
It's so wonderful the way it is.
But this spring, the dirt path will look different. The Parks Department will pave it, part of a $2.7 million project called the Van Cortlandt Park Putnam Greenway. The goal is to make the path more accessible, including to people with disabilities. Reaction is divided.
No, they shouldn't do that. It's a little more natural this way.
It's good for the bike, okay? And that means that they have a smoother ride. They don't have to hit the dirt road.
While there's disagreement about the surface of the path, some are more concerned about what is underneath.
If people know that this area was an enslaved African burial ground, then they will know that Africans had a presence here.
Local historian Nicholas Dembowski says about 20% of the population in this area during the colonial era were enslaved Africans, and that a newspaper story from 114 years ago reported the discovery of graves believed at the time to have contained slaves. Many likely worked on a plantation that operated where the park is now. Many of the remains were removed, but it's possible some remain.
I think the issue of the paving of the trail, it brought this issue of an old forgotten burial ground to the forefront. And without the paving project, I don't know if we'd be talking about it right now.
We may learn what's hidden under the trail pretty soon. Earlier this year, the Van Cortlandt Conservancy ordered a study from the USDA. They brought in soil scientists that used ground-penetrating radar to scan the soil. Here's cell phone video of the scientists at work. They're scheduled to return to collect more soil samples. Neither the Parks Department nor the Conservancy will say what they'll do if the presence of remains is confirmed, but the Conservancy and local groups are advocating for plaques or signs that tell the story of the slaves who helped this land thrive and whose names we'll never know. In the Bronx, Amy Yancey, New York 1.
And another developing story we're following tonight. Police opened fire in Brooklyn, sending a man to the hospital. Amy Yancey is live in East New York, where officials just wrapped up a news conference. Amy.
That's right, and we finally have an update on that man's condition. He is in critical condition at Brookdale Hospital here in Brooklyn. He was shot 3 times by police. Now, police gave an update a short while ago explaining what led to the shooting, and basically they say that 3 uniformed officers were driving around in the area in an unmarked car when they noticed that man's Toyota Camry. They say it was driving erratically. It did not have the headlights on. So they attempted to stop the vehicle, but the man kept on going. Eventually, the car came to an abrupt stop here on Van Sicklen Avenue in Brooklyn. The driver, police say, then gets out and starts walking towards the officers and points a gun at the officers. Police officials say the man is in his early 40s, and after that gesture, pointing that gun to the officers, they opened fire and struck him in the arm, leg, and abdomen. Now, the weapon was recovered at the scene, and it turned out to be a pellet gun. There were other people out here who heard it all happen, but police officials say it's still very early on in the investigation. Take a listen.
Officers observed a Toyota Camry driving in an erratic manner, veering in and out of traffic with no headlights on. As the officers pulled up behind the vehicle, the perpetrator exited his vehicle with a gun in his hand. The perpetrator walked towards the officers and pointed the gun at them. 2 of the 3 officers discharged their firearms, striking the male 3 times.
Now, this happened at around 6:30 in the evening, so there were people walking around in the area that heard the multiple gunshots, and they started running for cover.
We was all in the shop, and then we heard multiple shots. It was customers, it was busy. Customers in the shop, we heard the shots, and after the shots rang out, we all hit the deck and fell down. When the shots stopped, we all went outside. We saw officer up and down, calling it in. So I heard 2 shots, then multiple shots behind the 2 shots.
Were the officers saying anything?
No, they weren't on the radio calling it in, I assume. But at the same time, they had him on the ground for about 40 minutes before they got any type of medical attention for him.
There is surveillance video of this incident. I was able to see it myself. It does show this man walking in the direction of police, but there is an obstruction that covers what happens next. Police are reviewing that video and talking to witnesses in the area. The investigation continues. That's the latest from here in East New York, Brooklyn. Amy Yensi, back to you.
Amy, thank you for that live report. We go next.